The Philadelphia Eagles may have lost one of the most productive pass rushers from last season, but the deeper story is how Howie Roseman once again managed to turn what looked like a major setback into a calculated advantage for the future of this football team. When Jalen Phillips arrived in Philadelphia before last year's trade deadline, the move immediately changed the trajectory of the Eagles' defense. At that point in the season, Philadelphia needed help along the defensive front, and defensive coordinator Vic Fangio knew exactly who he wanted. Having previously coached Phillips in Miami, Fangio believed he was the perfect fit for the system, and the results spoke for themselves almost immediately. Over just 8 games with the Eagles, Phillips generated 41 pressures, a remarkable number that projected to more than 80 pressures over a full season. While some fans focus exclusively on sack totals, coaches often pay much closer attention to pressure rates, disruption, and consistency. Phillips delivered all of that. He helped transform Philadelphia into one of the league's top defensive units and showed exactly why Fangio pushed so hard for the organization to acquire him. What made the situation even more interesting was how much Phillips enjoyed his time in Philadelphia. By all accounts, he embraced the city, the fan base, and the atmosphere surrounding Eagles football. The experience of playing meaningful football in front of a passionate crowd appeared to have a major impact on him, and it quickly became clear that the Eagles wanted him to remain part of their long-term plans. Before free agency even opened, there were strong indications that Philadelphia intended to make a serious effort to retain him. The organization reportedly viewed him as one of its top priorities and was prepared to offer a substantial contract extension. The Eagles recognized his impact and were willing to invest heavily to keep him in midnight green. Then reality struck. The Carolina Panthers entered the picture and offered a contract that completely changed the market. Phillips received a 4-year deal worth $120 million, averaging $30 million annually. The contract included a $35 million signing bonus, $60 million guaranteed at signing, and a total guarantee package of $80 million. For many teams, losing a player after making such a strong effort to retain him would be a devastating blow. But one of the defining characteristics of successful organizations is preparation. Great front offices never operate with only one plan. They prepare for multiple outcomes, and that's exactly what happened here. Instead of getting caught in a bidding war that could compromise future roster flexibility, Roseman pivoted. His response was the acquisition of Jonathan Grenard. Philadelphia not only acquired Grenard, but also secured him with a new contract worth $25 million per year, significantly less than what Carolina committed to Phillips. More importantly, the guaranteed money attached to Grenard's deal came in at $50 million, which is $30 million less than the Panthers committed to Phillips. At first glance, some fans may focus on the fact that Philadelphia surrendered draft capital to make the move. However, the bigger picture reveals why the Eagles front office remains one of the most respected operations in professional sports. Because Phillips departed in free agency, Philadelphia is expected to benefit from the compensatory pick formula, potentially recovering valuable draft assets in the future. That means Roseman's overall strategy could ultimately replace much of the value surrendered in the Grenard trade while simultaneously securing a proven pass rusher at a more manageable financial commitment. Then comes the salary cap aspect, which may be the most impressive part of the entire situation. Recent salary cap figures reveal that Grenard's 2026 cap hit sits at just $6.3 million. Meanwhile, Arnold Ebiketie carries a cap hit of only $1.9 million, and AJ Epinesa comes in at approximately $1.3 million. Combined, those 3 players account for roughly $9.5 million against Philadelphia's salary cap. Now compare that to Phillips. His 2026 cap hit for Carolina is approximately $10 million. Think about that for a moment. The Eagles are essentially allocating less cap space to 3 pass rushers than the Panthers are allocating to Phillips alone. At the same time, Philadelphia committed significantly less guaranteed money and maintained greater long-term roster flexibility. This is exactly why Roseman continues to earn praise throughout the NFL. He consistently finds ways to maximize value while protecting the organization's future. Every move is connected to a larger strategy. Every contract is structured with future flexibility in mind, and every roster decision appears to serve a bigger vision rather than simply solving an immediate problem. What makes this even more fascinating is that Philadelphia's defensive front remains loaded with talent despite Phillips's departure. Fangio now has multiple pieces to work with, and the Eagles believe several of these players can thrive within the system. Rather than depending on one expensive star, Philadelphia has built depth and versatility across the defensive line. For a team with championship aspirations, that approach often proves more sustainable over the course of a long season. The question now becomes whether Grenard can replicate the impact Phillips had after arriving in Philadelphia last year. The Eagles clearly believe he can, and the financial structure of the move suggests they are confident they found a better long-term solution. But did Howie Roseman actually improve the Eagles' situation by letting Phillips walk and pivoting to Jonathan Grenard? Or would you have preferred Philadelphia to match Carolina's massive offer and keep Phillips in midnight green? One of the reasons Eagles fans continue to trust Howie Roseman is because these decisions rarely make complete sense in the moment. Sometimes you have to zoom out and look at the entire picture. When you do that here, it's hard not to see the strategy unfolding exactly as Philadelphia intended. The Eagles knew the market for pass rushers was going to explode. Teams around the league are desperate for players who can affect quarterbacks, and when free agency begins, desperation often drives prices far beyond what disciplined organizations are willing to pay. Carolina clearly viewed Jalen Phillips as a cornerstone piece and paid accordingly. Philadelphia, meanwhile, stayed true to its valuation. That discipline has become one of the defining characteristics of this front office. The Eagles are aggressive when they identify opportunities, but they rarely allow themselves to be trapped by emotional decisions. They understand that winning organizations aren't built by winning every negotiation. They're built by knowing which negotiations to walk away from. While the pass rushing discussion has dominated headlines, another important development quietly took place as the Eagles finalized their entire 2026 draft class. The final piece of that puzzle was third-round defensive tackle Marquil Bell, who officially signed his rookie contract. With that move completed, all 8 members of Philadelphia's draft class are now under contract as training camp approaches. Bell is an especially intriguing prospect because of both his size and his potential role in the future of the franchise. Standing at 6'8" and weighing 350 pounds, he possesses the kind of rare physical profile that immediately catches attention. Last season at Miami, he did not allow a single sack, and throughout offseason practices, the Eagles gave him opportunities at multiple positions along the offensive line. During portions of the spring program, Bell even worked with the first-team unit at right tackle when Lane Johnson was unavailable. He also received snaps on the left side, demonstrating the versatility that Philadelphia values so highly in offensive linemen. The fact that the Eagles invested a third-round selection in Bell speaks volumes. Philadelphia has long prioritized offensive line development, and the organization clearly believes Bell could become an important part of the team's future plans. Whether that eventually means competing for a starting role or potentially developing into a long-term successor for Lane Johnson remains to be seen, but the opportunity is certainly there. Getting all 8 draft picks signed before training camp is another example of organizational stability. There are no contract distractions. There are no lingering negotiations. Every rookie can now focus entirely on football as preparations begin for what the Eagles hope will be another championship caliber season. Training camp is approaching quickly, and with rookies and veterans scheduled to report to the NovaCare complex on July 25th, attention is beginning to shift from roster construction to on-field leadership. And that brings us to what may be one of the most important storylines entering the 2026 season. Who becomes the voice of this defense? Philadelphia's defense is loaded with young talent. There are emerging stars at multiple positions, but leadership cannot simply be assigned. It has to develop naturally inside the locker room. Last season, Nakobe Dean played a major role in that area. He handled communication responsibilities and frequently wore the green dot helmet that connected the defense to the coaching staff. His presence helped organize the unit and ensured everyone was aligned before the snap. When Dean wasn't available, Zach Bond often stepped into that responsibility. Now, entering another season under Vic Fangio, it appears Bond is prepared to embrace an even larger leadership role. According to comments emerging from the organization, Bond feels significantly more comfortable within Fangio's defensive system than he did when he first arrived. Instead of focusing solely on his own assignments, he now has the freedom to study offenses more deeply, recognize tendencies, and help teammates understand what is unfolding across the field. That level of confidence typically marks the transition from contributor to leader. The Eagles believe Bowen can be that player. What makes his emergence particularly important is the continuity it provides within Fangio's defense. This will be another year in the system, and familiarity often produces major jumps in performance. Players react faster, communication improves, mistakes decrease, execution becomes more consistent. Bound has already pointed toward one player who caught his attention throughout the offseason, cornerback Riq Woolen. According to Bond, Woolen's combination of size, speed, and athletic ability immediately stood out after arriving in Philadelphia. The veteran linebacker noted not only Woolen's physical gifts, but also his attitude and work ethic, traits that could help him become an important piece of the Eagles' secondary. Those comments offer an interesting glimpse into what is happening behind the scenes. Veterans are taking notice of the new additions, relationships are forming, leadership groups are developing, and the defense is beginning to establish its identity before a single regular season snap has been played. That identity still revolves around Vic Fangio. His demanding style has become legendary throughout football circles. Players who buy into his coaching methods often experience the best football of their careers. We saw that with multiple Eagles defenders over the last 2 seasons, and the organization believes the trend can continue. Philadelphia's defense has already been one of the NFL's most effective units under Fangio. Now the challenge becomes maintaining that standard despite personnel changes and increased expectations. The talent is there, the coaching is there, the leadership appears to be developing, and if Howie Roseman's latest roster moves prove as successful as many of his previous ones, the Eagles may once again field one of the league's most complete teams. With training camp only weeks away and so many new pieces preparing to take on larger roles, do you believe this 2026 Eagles defense has a chance to be even better than last year's unit? Or do the departures of key veterans create too many questions heading into the season? Another element that shouldn't be overlooked as training camp approaches is just how young this Eagles defense has become compared to previous seasons. That youth creates excitement because of the upside, but it also creates responsibility for players like Zach Bond and Jonathan Grenard. Bond's comments throughout the offseason suggest that he understands exactly what is expected from him. The biggest difference between a player simply knowing his assignment and a player leading an entire defense is awareness. When Bound talks about being less concerned with his own responsibility and more focused on identifying what offenses are trying to accomplish, that's the type of growth coaches want to see from a veteran linebacker. It also highlights why Fangio's system can be difficult for newcomers. The defense demands communication, discipline, and trust. Players are expected to understand not only their own job, but also how